Evening, everybody. It's 6:18, and this is your closing comment for today, Wednesday the 10th. Okay, I'm not going to go into a lot of stocks here tonight, but I do want to go over some news. We had a couple of interesting economic numbers today. I mentioned the mortgage apps were up 9.9 versus down 9.4 last week. you know, Nothing overwhelming there. I mean, that is a nice number and everything, and it usually is substantially smaller than that. As I mentioned this morning, 16% were refis and 6% were new purchases. Later on in the day, though, we also had the oil inventories. Last week was a drawdown of 5.5 million. This week was a build of 1.34 million. That in and of itself is not overwhelming. However, the oil, which was substantially higher, trading around 73, came all the way in and actually closed down on the day at 71.37. That was down 87 cents. So that was kind of a disappointment. We also, at 1 o'clock, had the results of the $37 billion worth of 10-year note auction. Rick Santelli gave it a C plus, but then went on to give a few comparisons that put it in a little different light. First of all, yesterday afternoon, the 10-year was trading at around 3.97%. At the end of this particular auction, it was trading at 4.029. In and of itself, that's not really overwhelming. The further out that you go on the curve for duration, the higher rates get, and you get a little bit of a question as to whether people are really willing to pay up for U.S. bonds. The bid to cover, which is the amount that was, it's pretty simple, the amount that was bid for versus the amount that was offered, was 2.51. But here's the interesting fact: Spain had a 10-year auction today. And where ours came in at 4029, so let's just call it 403, the Spanish one came in at 382. So that should, number one, give you some idea of how the rest of the world is looking at our credit. That's number one. Number two, the bid to cover in Spain was 9.2 to 1. Four times, almost four times, over three times better than ours was. And I don't remember whether it's tomorrow or Friday, but there is a 30-year bond auction. So, you know, we'll have to see how that works. Now, the market was strong today. It was, again, mostly mega cap stocks, having a party. More new highs for things like NVIDIA. And of course, in the rest of the market, we had Meta, 370 up 13 or 3.7%. NVIDIA 543 up $12 and change, and a little bit of weakness in Tesla, down about $1. We also had remarks this morning from New York Fed President Williams, who thinks that he believes the Fed may have to maintain a restrictive stance for some time. Um, so, a kind of a mix. And tomorrow we have the CPI, and of course, being Thursday, we have claims, etc. And Friday, we have, besides that auction, we have the PPI. So core, regular PPI, core PPI um on Friday, CPI, core CPI tomorrow. We also have the start of the financials earnings starting Friday. We start with JP Morgan, and they're expected to be pretty decent, although, um, we've had so many earnings reductions um, in general that the bar is set pretty low. And so it feels to me like the market may be a bit higher. Um, Kaufman and Broad, KB Homes, KBH, closed 63.20 today, up 66 cents. They came out with earnings and they beat. They beat top and bottom line. However, what they missed on was the price of their homes, which squeezes margins. And so the stock, after closing, as I said, 63.20 with a high of 64, moved all the way down to 60.12. Not overwhelming for a stock that since October has gone from 42 to 64. But the last on it tonight is 61.71. That's down 83 cents. So down 83 on the net change, down a dollar and a half from the 4:30, the 4 o'clock close. As far as the futures go, let me go back a space here. We bought some Pfizer calls today. Now, remember that last month when Pfizer came down, we bought the stock for the stocks for total return. I think we paid 26.56, which gave us a yield. They raised the dividend the next day, raised the dividend to 6.4%. The company sells for roughly 16 times earnings, trailing 12 months. Earnings, by the way, come 3 weeks from yesterday, the 30th, before the market opens. But the forward earnings look like about 12 times, which I think makes the stock look cheap. It also makes it cheap from the standpoint of 6.4 yield. It's a little lower now because the stock has moved up. But we bought the February 29 calls, and that's right where the stock closed today, uh, around 29, 28.99, 29. The options closed within a penny of where we bought it. Um, I really kind of like this. And somebody pointed out to me today that people keep on talking about the fact that they don't have a pipeline, which means that they'll either have to develop one or buy some companies, as we have seen a lot of in this particular group in the last several weeks. And I'll also mention that Pfizer is not a huge company. It's 163 million and could in fact be bought. One of the big hits on the company is that they only make vaccines. Um, that actually doesn't bother me at all. I think that there will be needs for more vaccines, but more importantly, I'm noticing that there's a lot of research being discussed about vaccines as preventative for some pretty ugly diseases. And so, if that were the case, I don't have a problem with it being a vaccine only company at all. So, we're in there, and you know, the stock came down awfully hard. We bought it when it gapped down. It has since rallied and pulled right back to that same place where it broke down from. And technically, it's a little bit oversold. And frankly, I like it. That's what you pay me for. That's what I've done. Uh, Oil, as I said, was down 87 cents. Nat gas finally came back down. It was 54 degrees here today, so it doesn't really surprise me. Although there are more storms coming, and as I mentioned repeatedly, the supply and demand for nat gas is really a tight balancing act. The gold was up again during the day today and then closed down and on the low. This is not the seasonal time to get long the gold. I mentioned it this morning that the RSI looks like it's trying to turn back up. We are at support. The MACD looks like it may be getting ready to cross over. However, um, these are the 5 and 20. The 5 is already crossed down. We seem to be holding here, but if we break this orange line, which is the 50-day moving average, I think that we could, at the very least, test down here and possibly test the lows down here around 1940, 1950. Since we topped out over here, I've been looking for 1980 to 2020. Today's low was 2025, 2026, 2025, 90. You know, these are the lowest. Today was the lowest close since this lower high after the all-time high. So technically, I do not like this, and I'm just not going to play it. And today we ended up with the actual Bitcoin ETF. Actually, not ETF. There are 11 of them. And now the focus has moved a little bit more towards Ethereum, which, if you'll recall, I've written it repeatedly. It is the one that they do really the most actual commerce in. So it was a bit of a sell on the news when they made the announcement today. And tonight it has turned back to the upside. It's up 3%. Really looks pretty decent. But let's take a look at the Ethereum. Ethereum is up 142, which is 5.75%. Today, when Bitcoin was down, Ethereum was uh, up 236, which was 10%. So it's really outperforming. This will be the next one that'll be in focus. If you recall, this is the one that they use as a platform for building NFTs. If anybody is actually still interested in them, I'm sure that they'll recycle them now that they've taken all of the fluff out of that market. And tomorrow's another day, folks. I'll be back first thing in the morning with those CPI numbers, and it ought to be an interesting day and a half.